If the Big Bang Theory is true, then I would like to know what exploded and where did it come from and where did the energy come from and where did the space come from for the matter to expand into, and where did the organization come from and where did the information come from. There's a whole host of questions that are a whole lot harder for you to answer than in the beginning God. Where's information come from? This universe is not just random molecules circulating around. I mean, it carries information. Just like a book is so much more than ink on a paper, it carries information. And the DNA is more than just chemicals. It's information. So the evolutionist never answers the question, where did this information come from? Where did the energy come from? Where did the matter itself come from? And you gripe about my belief. I believe by faith in the beginning God. I know, I admit I don't understand that. But you believe hundreds of things by faith. You don't even understand that you're believing by faith. You think matter is either eternal or can create itself. Well, that's the two choices. How did matter get here? The world is here. Where did the matter come from? Did it just happen by itself, or is it all just imaginary? We're not really here at all. You're faced with the option of, we're not really here, this is all just our imagination, or it had a beginning, or matter is eternal, which is both of the second two options are in violation of the obvious laws of thermodynamics. Matter doesn't create itself. And everything degrades over time, so either it had a beginning or it didn't. If it had a beginning, then what was before the beginning? I mean, there's so many thousands of things you take by faith. I say in the beginning God, and you say, well, this matter somehow either was always here or created itself, and then this matter somehow became alive, and then this first living thing learned how to reproduce, and then it learned how to make something other than its kind. I mean, even though nobody's ever seen that, nobody's ever seen a dog produce a non-dog. Or you mentioned about, the fact that a wolf and a fox and a dog coming from a common ancestor off Noah's Ark in only 4,400 years. For heaven's sake, you believe they came from a rock. I mean, come on. I don't think my theory is that silly at all. So, if my answer to your question is still the same, I believe in the beginning God. I do take that by faith. Here's the major difference that I don't think you're going to understand. I admit mine is a religion. They do not admit theirs is a religion. They want you to think what they believe is science. I did a debate one time in university, and afterwards this lady came walking down the aisle. Boy, she was mad. The smoke was coming out her nose. She was angry at me. She came walking straight up toward me. I said, Lord, I'm coming home. She walked up with her hands on her hips and she said, tonight, you told everybody that we believe we come from a rock. We do not believe that. I said, ma'am, you need to calm down. You're going to blow a gasket. I said, ma'am, do you believe in evolution? She said, yes, I do. I'm a professor here at the university. I said, well, ma'am, would you please tell me then where we came from? She said, we came from a macromolecule. I said, and where did that come from? She said, from the oceans, from the prebiotic soup. I said, and where did that come from? She said, it rained on the rocks for millions of years. You could see it was slowly dawning on her. I do believe I come from a rock. Yes, ma'am, you do. Better be careful going outside. Don't step on Grandpa.
Beginning of the universe. God, spiritual matter, impact on material matter.
Okay, so two questions. All right.
Go ahead.
All right, your question, where did God come from, assumes that you're thinking of the wrong, obviously it displays that you're thinking of the wrong God, because the God of the Bible is not affected by time, space, or matter. If he's affected by time, space, or matter, he's not God. Time, space, and matter is what we call a continuum. All of them have to come into existence at the same instant, because if there were matter but no space, where would you put it? If there were matter and space but no time, when would you put it? You cannot have time, space, or matter independently. They have to come into existence simultaneously. The Bible answers that in 10 words. In the beginning, there's time. God created the heaven, there's space, and the earth. There's matter. So you have time, space, matter, created a trinity of trinities there. Just, time is past, present, future. Space has length, width, height. Matter has solid, liquid, gas. You have a trinity of trinities created instantaneously. And the God who created them has to be outside of them. If he's limited by time, he's not God. The guy who created this computer is not in the computer. He's not running around in there changing the numbers on the screen, okay? The God who created this universe is outside of the universe. He's above it, beyond it, in it, through it. He's unaffected by it. So the concept that a spiritual force cannot have any effect on a material body, well then I guess you'd have to explain to me things like emotions and love and hatred and envy and jealousy and rationality. I mean, if your brain is just a random collection of chemicals that form by chance over billions of years, how on earth can you trust your own reasoning processes and the thoughts that you think? Okay, so your question, where did God come from, is assuming a limited God. And that's your problem. The God that I worship is not limited by time, space, or matter. If I could fit the infinite God in my 3-pound brain, he would not be worth worshiping, that's for certain. So that's the God that I worship. Thank you.
You've mentioned the second law of thermodynamics to prove that God must have provided the initial energy or the initial something in the universe. Have you considered that some of the laws of nature only work in certain situations? For example, Newtonian physics breaks down towards the speed of light. So does the second law of thermodynamics really prove that God created the universe?
There are several ways to define the second law of thermodynamics. There's all kinds. Let me try to get. Well, it'll take me a minute, but basically they all boil down to the same thing. Matter, everything tends toward disorder. Okay, things don't order. That doesn't prove God created the universe, and it certainly doesn't prove the biblical view. Okay, and it doesn't prove everybody ought to become an independent, temperamental, fundamental, right-wing, radical, chicken-eating Baptist like me. However, if you keep studying, you will get there. Okay. I think the second law of thermodynamics demonstrates there must have been a beginning. Since everything is winding down, everything is falling apart, there had to be a beginning. There had to be something that wound it up. So yes, I think the second law of thermodynamics is proof positive that there was a beginning. Even the evolutionists will admit that. Oh yeah, 20 billion years ago. Well, what was before that? Was there any time or space before there was matter? And where did this matter come from? They have a totally illogical theory. Yes, I think that it's logical to say in the beginning God instead of in the beginning, nothing, or in the beginning dirt, or in the beginning matter, They worship matter like the Christian worships God. There's no difference. They're both religious. I think ours is more logical and scientifically defensible, but they're both ultimately, in the final analysis, are simply religious theories. So, the second law of thermodynamics, which is, as far as anybody knows, universally believed, as far as Newton's laws breaking down as you approach the speed of light, there's a lot of theories about that. There's also theories, there's an article in Discover magazine last year, April of 2003, that says Einstein was simply wrong, folks. Okay, there's a large article in there. The speed of light is not a constant. So I don't think it's correct to say that we know for sure that these laws break down as we approach the speed of light. It may be true. I don't know. I don't think anybody knows would be my point. I cover quite a bit about the speed of light and evidences of it in the last 10 years, proofs actually, scientific experiments that say the speed of light is not a constant. I'll get you some of those here. If I can get, oh, no, sorry about that. See, I told you about asking the questions in the right order, didn't I? Remember that? Be a lot faster. The second law of thermodynamics says everything's falling apart. There's lots of stars out there. I mean, like billions and billions of stars. We don't have a clue how any one of them could form by chance. And yet, obviously, they're here. So, the second law of thermodynamics, the Christian would predict that God created a universe, and we'll see things falling apart. The universe is winding down, okay? It's not getting better. And stars are blowing up. It's called a nova or a supernova if it's a big one. So yeah, we're losing things. And eventually the universe will experience what's called a heat death. Everything will be uniformly cold. And right now they look out in space and see this 3 degree Kelvin, minus 270 centigrade or minus 450 2.7, whatever it is, Fahrenheit. It's a universal temperature out there. It seems to be the same everywhere. And it seems to be this background noise, this radiation. Okay, that appears to be true. What does it prove? Oh, that proves the Big Bang. Oh, it doesn't prove the Big Bang. It doesn't prove the Big Bang at all. Nobody's for sure what's causing that. We are seeing stars appear to be drifting away, like the red shift, okay? There's not much question there's a red shift. The assumption is that maybe it's caused by the Doppler effect, but actually nobody knows what's causing the red shift. Even if it's true that it is stars drifting away or moving away, that would still beg the question of where did the energy come from to propel this thing? Where did the star itself come from? And I don't think we can prove positively that the redshift is proof of either great distances or that the universe that stars are moving away. They give the same thing with parallel motion or perpendicular motion to your line of sight. This guy said there was an early sign that redshifts indicate distance of galaxies. For quasars, however, the diagram shows a wide scatter in apparent brightness at every redshift. In fact, there is little correlation of brightness to redshift at all. Either quasars come in an extremely wide range of intrinsic luminosities, as most people believe, or their redshifts do not indicate distance. Sky and Telescope magazine 10 years ago. Thus, for us, the only conclusion can be drawn is that at least some quasars are relatively nearby, and a large fraction of their redshift is due to something other than expansion of the universe. Some people think redshift is for the Doppler effect from stars leaving. Maybe so. If it is, that's still an example of the second law. We see things get old, they die, they fall apart, and if their philosophy of life is you're only here to pass on your genes, that's the only reason you exist, eat, drink, and be merry, tomorrow we die, that's a pretty pessimistic worldview. I think there's a much better view than that. You were created in God's image, with a purpose. It's true everything's falling apart. The heavens wax old. I'm getting old. Everything's falling apart. My car's falling apart. Everything falls apart. How did it get wound up? Where did the initial organization, energy, and intelligence come from? Information is consistently being lost. Every time your DNA replicates, the little pieces break off, and it's like split ends on a hair, and eventually you can only replicate it so many times, and it quits replicating, and you die. If we are a copy off of a copy, 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 off of a copy of Adam, it's amazing we can even stand here and talk about it. Okay? The information must have been incredible in the original because it's been degrading ever since. That's the second law of thermodynamics. Everything is degrading. This building is degrading. If you don't have people constantly maintain this building, it will fall apart. The entire highway system in America will fall completely apart if we don't keep maintaining it. Every building on this planet will fall down into a pile of rubble if somebody doesn't keep fixing it. And even then, if they try desperately to keep fixing it, at some point it's still going to fall down. It's inevitable. That's the second law. So if you think that evolution can overcome that second law, I would like to understand how. Okay? The second law tells us everything's falling apart, therefore, obviously, there must have been a beginning. I can answer that in 10 words. In the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth. All right. That's interesting. I don't want to step in much of that either myself. How long will it take for us to evolve into a new species? Nothing ever evolves into any new species. Well, I had to use the word species. So nothing ever evolves into a new kind. Nobody's ever observed anything change to a different kind. Bacteria are still bacteria. If they become resistant to a drug, it's because they lost the locking mechanism on the ribosome, so the antibiotic can't lock on. It's no different than somebody handcuffing everybody, hauling them off to jail to kill them, but you don't have any arms. So they can't handcuff you, so you survive. Wow, beneficial mutation. Well, it might be for the moment, but it's not any new information. Bacteria don't evolve into something else. They lose information. They're resistant to a particular drug for a short time, but then you put them back in the population of regular bacteria, and they're inferior. The bacteria are still bacteria, for heaven's sake. That's not an example of evolution. Okay. The reason people reject the creation story is because they don't want somebody telling them what to do. The Bible says in the last days scoffers would come that would be willingly ignorant of the creation and the flood. 2 Peter chapter 3. Read it for yourself. They're willingly ignorant of the creation because that creation event tells us God created this place, which means He owns it, which means He makes the rules. They don't want to admit there was a flood because that flood indicates God has the authority to judge His creation. They just don't want to admit that. I cover this very thoroughly, by the way, on Seminar Part 2. You might want to watch that one. And they're right there out there. And by the way, my stuff's not copyrighted. You can get it, copy it, send back the originals, and get your money back. That's always been our policy. So yes, I can understand why the idea of an authoritarian Bible is objectionable to some people. Because that Bible says, thou shalt not do, quite a few things. Okay? So, yeah, I understand. The Bible says the fool has said in his heart, there is no God. I think the evidence for a designer is so obvious all around us. If you're walking through the woods and you find a painting hanging on the tree and you see no footprints, you see no people, you still conclude there was a painter. If you're walking through the woods and you find a building and you see no footprints, you see no people, you still conclude there was a builder. When you see a watch, that's proof of a watchmaker. When you see a creation, that's proof of a creator, whether you ever meet him or not. There just had to be one. Now, who is it? Is it Allah or Buddha or Jehovah? Well, that's a different set of arguments, but the fact is, there must have been a designer, whoever he was. There had to be a designer. We can argue later about which one's right, okay? But there had to be. People object to that. You said, what does Luke mean? Luke was telling them that in that day, some will be in the field and some will be in bed. That's proof the world is round. It's dark on one side. That's evidence right there. So I can explain. I don't know why Becca couldn't explain it, but that's pretty obvious to me. Now, hang on. What happened here? Okay. I visited Wayne Strickland's tombstone. I don't know if the other date's filled in yet or not. It's been a couple of years since I've been there, but the date was empty when I was there. He said he's an atheist. The Bible says the fool has said in his heart there is no God. God does not believe in atheists. And actually, I don't either, okay? You're going to die one of these days. I'm going to die. Now, fellas, I didn't drive all the way over here and leave my gorgeous wife because I like being gone, okay? I didn't come to win an argument. I came to win you over. Honestly, I would like to see you saved, going to heaven. Maybe you think you are. I don't know. But if you think God used evolution, you have the wrong God, okay? I know you write all kinds of articles for the Atheist magazine, according to your bio here, Jim, and I think that people run from God. People can't find God for the same reason a thief can't find a policeman. I sacrifice my time to travel and to do this because I'm concerned that people are actually dying and going to hell. I'm really concerned that that really happens. I believe the Bible teaches that. I believe that's literally true. I believe we were designed for a purpose. And God loves each of us. He